Well, hello everybody and welcome to the course. It is good to be with you. I am Professor Andy Molnar. Happy to be spending time with you. What a great course. Strategic Management. Hot dog. So let's begin. Chapter 1 really is all about the many facets of strategy and explains what is meant by competitive strategy. That's what we're going to talk about today and in the discussion. Right? So we'll want to understand the relationship between a company's strategy and its business model, right? Because that's going to introduce all of us to the kinds of competitive strategies that give a company an advantage over other rivals, right? What is your competitive advantage? So we're going to look at the winning sets, how to set a winning strategy, and which is what sets companies apart from each other, right? That portion of the strategy. So to do this, we're going to accomplish these learning objectives, right? In focusing on the competitive strategy and the company's business model. Now, what is a strategy, right? Well, normally companies have a wide degree of strategic freedom in choosing the hows of a strategy, right? How to create products or services that attract customers, how to position the company and industry, how to develop and deploy resources that are going to build that valuable competitive capability. How each functional piece of the business, that includes R&D, that includes the supply chain, production, sales, marketing, distribution, finance, and HR, will be operated and how to achieve the firm's performance targets. So as a result of these hows, right, a company's strategy is that coordinated set of actions that its managers are going to take to try and outperform the competitors and achieve this superior profitability. Now, I said a couple of key words there: competitive advantage and superior profitability. Those are going to be very important concepts. And so, in most industries, companies have, like I said, that freedom to choose their strategy. That's why they fail or they succeed, right? We're going to see that in week 2 in the Hoover Company example, right? So, this is that definition that I just mentioned. And among all other things that a manager will do, nothing affects the company's ultimate success or failure more fundamentally than how it's managed. Its management team is going to chart the path, chart the direction. That's the strategy that we're talking about. And so because it's going to define what you pursue, what needs to be done to produce good day-to-day operating excellence, right? That's really what we're after. And so what to look for in identifying a substantive overall company strategy is here. A distinctive set of choices. What are the management's decisions? That's why you want to hire the right people. Differentiate yourself from the rivals, which means create a competitive advantage, right? You want to fit your own particular situation for the competitive advantage. Make sure you do what you do within your skills and competencies. And you want to even compete differently, right? Doing what rival firms do or do not do, but better yet, do what rival firms cannot do, right? These are the visible actions that signal what strategy the company is pursuing and whether it will be effective for you in the long run. So as a result, let me go back to the last one. There we go. Here we go. So as a result, rather than the company's strategy needs, we want a strategy that at its essence is about competing differently. That really is a great line. Competing differently, right? And so if we have a minimize approach, we frankly have no strategy, right? And it's not going to be consistent. But if we have a strategic approach, it can take then various forms. Maybe it's low cost. Maybe it's other various aspects. We're going to talk about that later, including starting with our leadership model. Now, so a firm's business model is going to set forth that logic, right, for how its strategy will create value for the customers, right? Value for the customers. While at the same time generating revenues. Revenues, very important. That will come up often. Sufficient to cover the costs and realize profits. You can have a great strategy, but if you're not going to realize the revenue or the profits, you're not going to make it. So the business model is management's plan for delivering a valuable product in a manner that will generate revenues sufficient to cover the costs and, heck, give you an attractive profit, which is going to satisfy the stakeholders or shareholders, which is going to create more investment in your company. Now, there are two elements of a company's business model. That's the value proposition that lays out the company's approach to satisfying what the buyer wants at a price that they're willing to pay, that they think is a good value. And then the other piece I keep emphasizing is the profit formula. The profit formula is going to describe the company's approach to determine a cost structure that's going to allow for acceptable profits given the pricing tied to its customer value proposition. So this table here, which is also shown in the book on page 6, this table presents a comparison of the major competitors in a broadcast radio market, for example. So a competitor's customer value proposition is affected by the product price, which impacts its profit formula. So these values in turn are going to affect and are affected by the competitor's per unit cost structure and their own profit margin, which is unknown to the other, but each company is trying to ascertain that of the other, right? Because it's about those couple of concepts: the customer value proposition, the profit formula, which relates to the cost structure, and the profit margin on the left-hand side. And so the heart and soul of any strategy are the actions taken to gain this competitive edge, the strategic approaches that set the company apart. And those are listed on this slide, right? These are 5 of the most frequently used approaches to setting a company apart from its rivals and achieving that competitive advantage. You can either be a low-cost provider with its definition there, right? You can create broad differentiation. You could create focused focused differentiation, or best cost provider, right? Which is giving the customers more value for the money by satisfying the buyer's expectations on key features like quality or performance or service, etc., while beating their price expectations. So, as I said, this is the heart and soul of any strategy. The actions and the moves in the marketplace that managers in your company are going to take to improve the company's financial performance, to strengthen its long-term competitive position, and to gain that competitive edge over the other competition. So sustainability is relative, right? With some advantages are going to last longer than others. So regardless of how sustainable a competitive advantage may appear to be at a given point in time, the conditions will change. This is affirmative, a given. So even a substantial competitive advantage over the rivals may crumble in the face of drastic shifts in the market conditions or disruption. And we're going to see that again in week 2 in the Hoover Company example. So Starbucks here is focused on enhancing the customer experience in its stores. Among all the things managers do, nothing affects a company's ultimate success or failure more fundamentally than how well its team manages and charts the company's direction, develops this competitive strategic movement and business approaches, and then pursues what needs to be done internally within the company to produce those good day-to-day strategic execution and operating excellence. Now, first-rate capabilities and skills are essential to building that competitive advantage that's going to lead to strategic success. So firms with capabilities that are strong and well matched to the firm, valued by the customers, and costly and or difficult for competitors to acquire, those imitate you, are the basis for creating sustained competitive advantage. So listen to that. The basis for creating a sustained competitive advantage are those first-rate capabilities and skills that the competitor can't get their hands on. Okay? So we have this then strategic movement principle, right? Because strategies change over time. Changing circumstances and ongoing management efforts to improve strategy cause a firm's strategy to evolve, right? And so a condition that makes this evolution is a condition that makes the task of crafting a strategy really a work in progress all the time, not a once and done type of thing. So a firm's strategy is shaped partly by management analysis and choice, and partly by the necessity to adapt and of learning while you are doing so, right? So every company must be willing and ready to modify its strategy, or you're dead, in response to market conditions, technological changes, moves by the competitors, shifting buyer needs. Now they're not interested in your product, right? Or emerging markets. Now most of the time, a company's strategy evolves incrementally from management's ongoing efforts to fine-tune the strategy and to adjust certain elements in response to new learning or even unfolding events. And finally, industry environments characterized by high velocity change is going to require companies to repeatedly adapt their strategic effort. So two elements combine to form the company's realized strategies. And figure 1.1 in the book demonstrates that. That's on page 9. So a company's strategy is a blend of these proactive initiatives and reactive adjustments, right? So, and that's illustrated in the slide, right? Where the elements of strategy that become realized strategy, right? So we have these deliberate strategic elements, which are planned new initiatives. And at the bottom you have emergent strategy elements. These are unplanned reactive responses. And so strategy elements that prove unsuccessful are abandoned and replaced by newly developed planned initiatives or reactive strategy elements in the current strategy. So you have these deliberate elements, you have these emergent elements, and you want to abandon the items that aren't producing any fruit and stick with the realized strategy, right? And evolving it over time. Okay, this is where I'm going to stop now. I'm going to come back with part 2 of 2 and start with the realized strategy.